The first time they crossed my fence, I shrugged it off. The second time, I recorded it on my phone. The third time, a drone hovered over my pond and I told it out loud. "Fly over this land one more time and I'll teach you what gravity feels like." That line said once steady is where everything started tearing open. My name is Ethan Brooks. This farm has my grandfather's name on the gatepost. The barn is the same red he painted with his hands, and my family's deeds are older than the county road the developers paved. I've kept cows, fixed fences, and mended hearts the way a man mends things out here, slow, patient, stubborn. I never thought the fight would be over something as small as who gets to look at what from a cul-de-sac, but it wasn't about aesthetics. It never was. It began simple enough, a welcome committee from Maple Ridge Estates. Women with perfect hair and men wearing polos who smell like new houses. Ms. Karen Whitmore was their face clipboard tortoiseshell glasses, that smiling tilt that means you've already decided how the story ends. She stood in my gate and said, "We just want to ensure visual cohesion. Livestock visibility affects our property values." She walked my fence line like she owned the rows of posts. She took a photo of my barn, and I remember watching the flash reflect off the tin roof and thinking that flash is the first footprint of trouble. I showed her the trust papers, the old land deed, the name stamped there since 1954, and she hummed about the spirit of community standards, which apparently include uniform picket fences and no cows in sight. I told her plainly, "I'm not part of your HOA." She smiled and left, but the smile had teeth. After that, their visits changed rhythm. New faces, same script. Just checking in, they'd say, then click the phone, then jot a note. Then came the drone the first quiet Wednesday. It buzzed over the pond like an insect with a camera, and for the first time I felt watched in a way that wasn't neighborly. I threw a rock at it and watched it wobble away. Next week, a newer model came quieter, smarter. I bought trail cameras at a bait shop, put them in birdhouses, hid a mic in a coffee can. You learn to hide things when you live on land that people want to rewrite. The pattern got worse. Anonymous complaint letters to county offices, livestock odor, possible contamination paperwork that summoned inspectors who walked my stalls and took photos. Yes, but never with the alarmed faces you'd expect from real problems. The invoices, the forms, the stamps. They were a slow machine of paperwork meant to make me the problem. They were testing me, pushing, looking to see what would break first. Then there was Brian Ellis, a smooth-talking man who parked a silver SUV by my gate and offered a number that would make most men listen. He called it an opportunity, an easy out. He slid a glossy sheet across the hood with a check I never asked for and told me, "Think about resting. We'll take care of the hard parts." He smelled like wood polish and city money. He didn't belong on a gravel lane. I didn't trust him. Later, I found his truck in my camera footage handing a manila envelope to Karen. Buy or break, whichever worked. They moved from postcards and politeness to things that could physically hurt my operation. Tires sliced on the tractor irrigation controls, smashed a midnight visit where a gate was cut and a dozen calves were loose in the dark, and I had to work until dawn, herding them back, flashlight shaking in my hand. Someone dumped demolition trash by the southern fence drywall insulation rebar, then filed a complaint about an unauthorized dump to make me look like I'd created it. The strategy was clever and ugly. Make me the nuisance file, the paper make the county act. I'll admit there were nights I sat on the porch with a gun across my knees and wondered if the smart thing was to sell. Take the money Brian offered and walk away with my pride folded up in a box. I felt tired in my bones. I started to ask myself the ugly question, was I being a stubborn fool? Was I the trouble they were painting me to be? There was a moment, a long, raw moment, when I almost quit. The cameras would catch someone on the property, and then the county would show up the next day with forms and curiosity, and I'd be the odd one with mud on my boots and a ledger of incidents like proof of guilt. Friends said, "Take the check." My wife, if I had one in this story, she would have said, "Quit while you're ahead." But I kept the deed folded in my top drawer and found reasons to keep the trail cameras rolling. I kept the date and timestamps in a binder. And then Brian, the investor-looking man, did something I didn't expect. He came back hat in hand and handed me a USB drive. On it, emails, bank transfers, texts, and one recording where Karen, perfectly composed, said, "Slow and sure. If we can't buy him, we'll make it impossible for him to stay." The voice was cold enough to make me sit down on the kitchen steps. That little drive felt heavier than a sledge. Sheriff David Lawson came out that afternoon. He knew my grandfather's name and where we'd lost a barn roof to a storm 20 years ago. He listened to the recording, looked at the footage of men with laser tape measures walking my fence, at the pictures of Brian counting bills at the timestamps where they coordinated complaints. Sheriff Lawson said the words I needed to hear. "This isn't just HOA nonsense. This is criminal." He told me to stop reacting and start building a case. He said we stop playing defense. So we did. I called Laura McConnell, a lawyer who doesn't smile unless she's about to win. She told me to bring everything: the camera files, the USB, the complaint letters, photos, timestamps. I labeled them like soldier supplies: trap cam 3, mauve pond.drone, 0923.mp4, complaint 0812.pdf. We filed, we organized, we talked to Rachel Ortega, a local reporter who likes property rights stories and who promised to hold a light where the county might try to hide things. Meanwhile, I dug trenches, legal erosion control permits in hand in the pasture where Maple Ridge could see. It was a trap of sorts, not for violence, but for curiosity. They came at night, one of Karen's regulars, the same man who'd measured my posts. He slipped in a trench and came out covered in mud, cursing under his breath. The camera got him. We got him. The trial was a slow burn that turned into a thunderclap. In a courthouse that smelled of old varnish and lemon cleaner, Laura laid out the timeline like a surgeon. We played the recording. Karen's voice that phrase about making the land impossible, and the room went quiet the way a field goes when a storm is coming. Brian Ellis testified under oath. He handed over emails showing payments that matched transfers to a company called Cypress Horizon, contracting the same name on invoices found at the pond when deputies caught two men red-handed fertilizer sacks dumped and ready to be thrown into the water. I watched on a screen as Deputy Ruiz's footage rolled. Two men caught by my motion lights stopped mid-step with bags in their hands. Their truck registered to Cypress Horizon. One of them tried to run, another dropped a bag and just stared. They cuffed them there in the glow of the floodlight, and they admitted who hired them. The threads pulled tight. The county prosecutor's office connected the payments to Karen's HOA account and to that realtor who'd sold two families' lots in Maple Ridge with promises of a future nature corridor nonsense meant to inflate prices. The Langstons and the O'Neills testified they were sold a dream, an access that never existed. The jury watched the emails, the bank transfers, the video of men trespassing, the audio of Karen's own plan. I felt my jaw go numb when the judge read the verdict. Guilty conspiracy to commit property sabotage, harassment, tampering with environmental data. Karen's eyes flicked to me, once hard and small like a trapped animal. They placed the cuffs. The clerk banged the gavel. It landed like a final honest sound. I drove back to the farm that evening and stopped at the gate. Deputy Ruiz was there, the flashlight still on the trenches I'd dug, filled with rain that shone like steel. There was no cheering. There was just the quiet, the kind that settles after a court reads truth out loud. Kate Whitmore. Karen was led away. Her HOA frozen assets held her name on a docket, and not the gate. The pond was clear. The cattle in the pasture huddled in their slow chew. The barn looked the same red it always had. I didn't celebrate. I stood on the porch and watched the sun drop lungs, working like I'd run a long race. The thing I want you to take away is this: paperwork can be a weapon, and a smile can hide a plan. But patience with proof, a logbook, a camera, the grit to keep filing can stop it. The world handed me two choices: be bought out or be broken down. I chose to be stubborn, but not reckless. I chose to build a record, not a rumor. The fight wasn't pretty. It left scars, and it left me asking if I'd overplayed my hand. In the end, the truth did what it should. It held. Truth is slow, inconvenient, and messy, but it's harder to argue with than a well-placed complaint. Justice came for them the way rain comes for drought, not suddenly, but enough. Stand your lines.